Hello, everyone. This is Karthik here. I and our team at SciTech Talks personally welcome you all for the second podcast. This time, we have Soumen Basu here for the podcast, and he has he is going to share some of his expertise on ultrasound-based gallbladder detection. And so, Soumen, to briefly introduce about Soumen is a final year PhD student and he is a recipient of the Prime Minister's Research Fellowship at Department of Computer Science at Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Somen's primary research interest is in computer vision, deep learning, medical imaging analysis. His doctoral work is on detecting gallbladder cancer from ultrasound images. He is particularly interested in designing deep learning solutions with limited supervision. His prior works involved unsupervised, semi supervised, weakly supervised learning, contrastive learning, curriculum based learning, and explainability. Before joining as a PhD scholar, he worked as a software engineer and he was also a member of technical staff at Adobe Systems India and a research assistant at Penn State University, USA. And if you are interested in talking more about him, I'm going to mention his profile link in the description of this video. Uh, Feel free to get in touch with him in case if you are interested in any further collaborations with him. Without wasting much time, let's go ahead and discuss more about the Salmon's expertise.
Yeah. Thank you so much for accepting the invite, first of all. It
Yeah,
was,
thanks a lot for inviting me. It was absolutely an
yeah, no problem. I've been doing this. So earlier, we started with webinar sessions.
honor.
Specifically on computer vision, started talking to multiple PhDs, postdocs, industry professionals, and then later moved to podcast style because
Mhm.
that is looking more comfortable now in reaching out to audience because the podcast style is more like a rather than presenting your work, which is there, it digs a bit deeper and tries to understand more into the insights into your research work. So uh, that's where uh, that's where we thought of, okay, let's move to the podcast then. Uh, so starting with, can you briefly introduce yourself first, uh, and 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 then you have a very prestigious Prime Minister Research Fellowship. So how did you apply for that, and did you had to specify a research statement when you applied there itself,
Right,
uh, how challenging it was to get into a Prime Minister Research Fellowship?
right. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions. So, yeah, let me just first introduce myself and then I will probably answer the questions regarding to the PMRF or the Prime Minister's Research Fellowship.
Yeah.
So I am right now kind of finally a PhD student at IIT Delhi, and I am attached to the computer science department. And I work with Professor Chetan Arora, and my primary interests are computer vision, deep learning, and medical image analysis. So prior to joining the IIT Delhi PhD program, as a, I did work as a SDE that you would want to call it, the software development engineers, and I worked with Adobe Systems for close to 3 years. And before that, I did my master's at IIT Delhi as well. So yeah, that was briefly my background. And coming to the Prime Minister's Fellowship. So actually, there are two modes of gaining the entry to the Prime Minister's Fellowship. One they call the direct mode of entry, when you are conferred upon the fellowship when you enter the program. And the other mode is known as the lateral mode of entry, where you can apply after, if you're a master student, then you should apply within 12 months of your entry. And if you're a bachelor student, you can apply up to, I believe, 18 months after your entry. Okay, so during our time, I think these limits were relaxed by 6 months because it was COVID at that time. So yeah, so that actually worked in our favor. And I think apart from that, the eligibility would be there are certain GPA requirements and there are certain credit requirements that you have to fulfill. I believe at that time the requirement was 12 credits and 4 courses. I think that was the requirement they specified at that time. It might change though. I mean, the PMRF website would have a more detailed elaboration on the eligibility criteria. Coming to the entry procedures, so since I was a lateral entry, I was already working on my research problem, so it was much easier for me to draft a research proposal in that sense, right? So we had to draft a research proposal and, kind of a SOP along with your curriculum vitae, of course, and you need the recommendations from preferably your supervisor to support your application. And before doing all that, you have to be nominated by your institute. So that's the first condition you need to fulfill. You cannot apply on your own. So you have to be nominated by your institute, and to do that, the institute will probably rely on your department to nominate you first, and then they will forward the nomination to the National Coordination Committee. Then you get an invite to submit all your application materials, which you do, and it gets reviewed by a panel of the national experts. And then probably if they find the application worthy of PMRF, then they will allot that PMRF to you. I think that's the procedure in a brief. Yeah, coming to the challenges, I would say the application procedure was fairly simple. I did not face any particular challenge regarding that. The only challenging part would be to, do substantial work to get yourself nominated by your department. So yes, so you have to be very proactive in your research from day one, and you have to be visible in your department. So your supervisor does have a big role in that. And of course, my supervisor, Professor Chetan Arora, was very supportive in that sense. So yeah, things worked out in my favor.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. I think it was in way back in 2016.
Right.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. I think it's my headphones are not working. So
Okay,
it's fine.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, I think it was in 2016 when I started my deep learning journey at IIT Hyderabad. There was a deep learning summer school, and that was the first time I heard Professor Chetan Arora at that time. And then, if I remember correctly, he was working with egocentric videos. If I remember
Right.
correctly, that was his research expertise. And then he gave some brilliant talks at that time. And then I do remember I shaking hands with him and interacting with him. I'm not sure if you would be able to remember after such a long time, but yeah, I had some close connection with him at that time.
Right.
So
I think
and
Hyderabad, the summer school is very famous, I would say. I think a lot of students do attend that. Even I attended it, but unfortunately it was virtual, so I could not actually, make those
okay,
personal connections. But
okay.
even then it was a nice takeaway, like all the brilliant lectures and everything from all around the world. It's basically amazing.
Correct. So that was the first summer school when I attended in 2016. And that we thought, okay, that's a great initiative because the first half of the sessions were like, I'm not sure if they're doing the same format still. The first half of the session, they do the research lectures, and then the second half of the session is mostly like in hands-on. And then it was a week long. It was very good at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. And so, did you decide to work on gallbladder? How did you decide to work on gallbladder cancer detection, or what was the strong motivation behind that?
Right. So see, Karthik, when I sort of started my PhD journey, so I was actually looking for, some kind of real-time problems where I can see the real impact, right? So that was one of the strong motivations for, getting myself aligned with the problem. So initially, I was not working on the gallbladder cancer. I was working on something else related to task consistency and segmentation problems. And then that one was not really going well. So I was not really having fun on that project. And somehow Professor Chetan realized that. And he told me like, do you want to take this problem up as your PhD? Just give a thought about it. So I sort of thought about the problem and the impacts that we can make, and then yeah, I think then it was a fairly good decision that I make in the hindsight. Yeah. So honestly speaking, like you are a PhD yourself, you would know that there would be a lot of moments of failure, right? So
Yeah.
you have to have a strong motivation of going on. So this problem itself was a very strong motivation for me to, wake up on this Monday mornings and still run my failed experiments. And yeah, so this was an amazing problem, I would say, in terms of opportunities and the scope of impact that I would be able to make.
Good. So it's the mainly the scope of impact is what really motivated you to pick up this specific problem.
Right. Yeah. And specifically, this was a India specific problem, I would say. So gallbladder cancer, if you see, the highest incidence rates are in India, and in the northern America, sorry, in the northern Indian population, we do see a lot of incidence in Indian women particularly, and it's one of the leading causes of cancer-related deaths in Indian women. And unfortunately, gallbladder cancer has a very aggressive nature, I would say. And usually, you get about 6 months on an average after you get detected with it, because that type of cancer is kind of silent, and it actually progresses until it's very late, till it gets detected. So yeah, so if we can utilize the AI, deep learning, etc., to so to detect it at a timely manner, that would definitely help. I mean, research shows that early intervention could actually improve the survival rate by a significant margin. So if it is undetected, the mean survival time for, I mean, I think that they measure it in the 5-year survival rate. The mean 5-year survival rate is about 5%, if it is left untreated, and if it is early detected early, and if it is surgically intervened, that survival rate dramatically increases to 57%. So that's a huge jump over there. So yeah,
Okay.
so detecting early with maybe deep learning, etc., is a strong motivation behind it. And the clinical characterizations of gallbladder cancer is actually not very well defined for ultrasound. So, I mean, it can be well detected in CT or MRI, but again, CT or MRI is something which is costly and not very accessible to a lot of people in our country. Whereas ultrasound, in terms of that, is cost effective, it's accessible to a lot of people, and often it's kind of the first line diagnostic modality that has been performed. So yeah, those were kind of the strong motivations that I felt aligned with, and yeah, I chose the problem.
Okay, so you mean that once the cancer has started, it
Mhm.
takes at least 6 months to show its symptoms, is it? That's what you're trying to say here.
No, not really. So what I mean is, the cancer may start and it may not even present with its symptoms. So
Okay.
usually it gets detected at a late stage, and usually the average survival time after detection is 6 months.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
till it gets detected until the patient succumbs to it, that average duration is usually 6 months.
Six
Because
months.
it often
Okay.
gets detected accidentally. It's kind of when people are having gallbladder stone surgery, the surgeon will find out, okay, something looks off on the gallbladder. They are sending it to the histopathology, and they get back with a malignancy report, right? So it's often get detected like accidentally. It's not that it's a systematic detection.
Okay. Okay. I think it's extremely useful if it is detected during the surgery, and then if the patient has to go through again one more kind of a treatment for specifically for cancer. I think it's a huge stress on that specific person. I think,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think this kind of a preliminary diagnosis or identifying the cancer at a very early stage
Right.
definitely will be
And in a
extremely beneficial.
non-invasive manner, in a
Correct,
non-invasive.
correct.
That's the
I'm
specific
going to touch
thing.
upon
Yeah.
that point. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good. And did you had an opportunity to interact with doctors and patients to understand various challenges? So, how did you study about this specific problem?
Right. So not directly with the patients, but yeah, we did interact with doctors. And of course, if you look at the publications that we are sort of sort of dealing with, that we are sort of churning out from our lab. I mean, many of the co-authors are actually doctors and they are specialist radiologists. So we need their opinion at different stages. I mean, not just opinion, their domain expertise at different stages, in terms of, how the model is behaving, whether it is behaving in an expected manner, whether it is actually highlighting a malignant region. So these information are very critical for a model success, because often the deep learning models are black box in nature, and we do not want that. So in terms of a medical imaging application, we would want a model to be, absolutely explainable. It should be able to explain its decision from end to end. Otherwise, the clinicians will not trust it. That's point number one. And point number two, at times it is also a mandate by the law, right? You are required to, trace back your decision to the reason why you are saying something is malignant. So yeah, so the doctors are kind of working with us in tandem. So they keep on giving us input. It's a feedback loop. We sort of take in those inputs. We try to motivate the design with the inputs, and then again come back with the results and sort of analyze it together. So it's kind of an intertwined process that goes on. And in the beginning, yes, we did interact with the doctors, and we did understand the challenges that they are facing. So yeah, those discussions were very insightful. And as I said, like a lot of the knowledge that I have already discussed is actually from the doctors that we kind of gain insight into that. Right. And coming direct to the patients, no, we did not interacted with the patients, but yeah, doctors, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I understand how crucial these experiments or the discussions with the doctors are, because I was,
Right.
I was working on this problem of the surgical haze removal in the
Uh,
surgical videos, and we had an opportunity to talk to some of the doctors, and apparently we realized that for some of our initial work, when we were trying to enhance the surgical videos which were filled with haze, uh, and then we were making some kind of a false enhancements in some regions. It was looking as if it was bleeding more uh,
okay.
than actually it was, and we couldn't realize this until we really spoke to some of the doctors there back when we were working on this problem at that time. Yeah, I really understand how crucial these discussions are and how insightful these are. Coming from a non-medical background, I think it's extremely beneficial.
Yes, yes. I mean, we are coming from the engineering perspective, right? We
Correct,
do understand how AI works or how computer vision works, but yeah, how is it useful for the medical application? We need a combined effort. And I think like we are at 2023, so there is no such distinction as a medical profession or engineering profession. I think
correct,
there is a merger that is happening in this new age era, and that is absolutely necessary. So AI is not our enemy. We should make it a friend of ours.
correct,
That's
correct.
what I believe, right? So
Right,
it
right.
should not be AI versus the radiologist. It should always be AI plus radiologists.
Yeah, yeah. It's a yeah. I think that's how should be the case. We should not really worry about AI replacing the things, but we
Right,
should more try to use it in a way that it is benefit for the sake of humanity, basically, in
right,
upgrading
right.
ourselves. And yeah,
Right. So we should embrace AI, and we should figure out, the policies. I mean, yeah, absolutely. The policies are required to ensure that it is not misused or abused. But at the same time, there's no point in like, turning a blind eye to AI. So it's happening, whether we like it or not, it's happening. So it would be, prudent to sort of, embrace the AI and see how we can make the best use of it. So I think, yeah, that should be the goal. And
yeah,
specifically, I would say India specific problems, because there are a lot of challenges which are, typical to Indian subcontinent. Like at least gallbladder cancer is one. But again, if you talk about, autonomous driving, etc. So of course, the the Tesla cars that we see, which is running pretty nicely in US, I am pretty sure that they won't run in Indian conditions. So there are unique challenges in India which we should be embracing too.
Yeah. I think it's domain specificity. This is something which we really should concern
Yes,
actually. Yeah, yeah.
right. Yeah,
So generalizability is definitely a difficult thing to achieve, but yeah,
right.
I think there should be some domain-specific knowledge also should be
Exactly.
incorporated within the models, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
Good. So from although I have a very minimal experiences in medical image analysis, I am aware that medical data collection is extremely confidential and challenging. Right. So when you started with the process of data collection, I see that you have published papers and you in some of your papers mention explicitly about the data collection procedures
Right.
and the protocols that you have used and how many images that you have collected and everything. But we are more keen to understand was it how confidential this data collection was, and did you had to face any specific challenges during this data collection process as such?
Okay. So the burden of data collection was not directly on the IIT Delhi side. So the doctors actually had the burden of data collection.
Hmm.
So it was the burden was actually shifted to them. So and they did a fairly good job at that, I would say. And we
Hmm.
did not actually have to bother about these things because they are well versed researchers. They are very well versed with the protocols. Like I think it's a convention. I forgot the name. Yeah, whatever. And there is ICMR guidelines, and there would be the Institute Ethics Committee approval that you would be requiring. So all these things, the doctors took care of it, and they did a very good job at doing that. And once the ethics committee approval comes, it takes long, I would say. Yeah, in India that takes long. But once the ethics committee approval comes, then you are safe. I mean, you can do a lot of things with the data when you got the ethics committee approval, right? So you can publicize the data, but yeah, of course, you have to sort of adhere to the guidelines. Like right now, we are making the data set available to the community, but only if someone signs a license agreement with us. So that's the condition that were implied to us by the ethics committee. And coming to the patient's data, the sensitivity of patient's data, we do understand it's very sensitive. So first of all, the data is anonymized. There is no patient identifier in the data, neither in terms of the watermarks from the machines, or neither in terms of the file names. So these anonymizations were done, and also uh, there were patient consents that the doctors have taken. They got the written consents that yes, their data may be used for the research purposes. They are consenting to that. So yeah, in terms of the legal aspects, I would say all corners were covered. All due diligence were done. And I would say, yes, the process is challenging because we do want to assess, the what we call the domain adaptation, or the domain generalism that you were just talking about, right? Because we are currently collaborating with PGI Chandigarh, and we have the data for that center. But of course, if you want to deploy a system nationwide, you would want to understand how the model behaves when the domain changes. If you shift to a different patient cohort, let's say it's coming from the northeast of the country, or versus a patient cohort that Tata Mumbai, let's say, is seeing, right? So there would be a vast difference in patient cohorts, right? The demographics will change. Even the genotypes might change, right, of the patients, and also their food habit, their lifestyle, everything may differ. So of course, the nature of disease might slightly differ. And apart from that, there is another technical challenge, which is, the machine that has been used to perform the diagnostics. So the makers can be different. One may be made by company A, one may be made by company B, and they might be using different frequencies to analyze the ultrasound. So there would be a difference in terms of the appearance or the textual, or the textual context that we see. In that sense, there will be a domain difference in terms of one center's patient with the other center's patient. So it is very important that we assess the capability of the models in terms of a multi-center environment, and we validate the models in terms of a multi-center study. So to do that, we did require a lot of data from the other centers as well. I mean, at least 50, 60 patients from each center. Otherwise, the validation won't be statistically significant. And it is actually been proving to be a challenge, I would say. So for past 2 years, we have been relentlessly trying to get data from the other institutes. We very recently got the ethics committee approval from a few of them. Yeah, because the ethics committee approval may take even 2-3 years to complete, right? So, and then now there will be a data transfer agreement that has to be signed, and all these, bureaucratic processes. Although it's necessary, I would say it's absolutely necessary to protect the patient's privacy and to protect the patient's interest. But even then, it's proving to be a hard challenge, I would say, to getting the data.
Okay, okay, sure. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a useful insights that you've given about the domain shift for working on domain generalization. But I briefly went through about this concept of federated learning in medical imaging. By any chance, are you also working in that direction as well?
I am sort of exploring that direction, Karthik, honestly, because we did not have much data until now.
Mm. Mm.
So I very recently got my hands into another center's data with a very limited set of patients. I would say it's not even 40 patients. But
Okay.
it's anyway, it's still better than nothing. I can start myself. Yeah, so of course, federated learning or maybe distillations. I mean, these are the most explored domains. I mean, directions that anybody would want to head out towards the domain generalization. Yes, federated learning is on the back of my mind, so we can definitely talk about it if you're interested in that.
Okay. 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 No problem. Maybe I have some set of questions at the moment.
Yes.
Maybe when you explore that specific topic more,
Yeah.
probably we can ask, but we can do another specific session on federated learning itself, because I see that the complexity involved in that specific domain itself is very huge.
Right.
I've explored it very briefly, but not fully into it. Yeah. It's the other thing was you have mentioned that so these radiologists were the authors itself, is it? Uh,
Right. Right.
who were
Yeah. So
annotating the data sets.
right. So the data annotation, yes. So the annotation of the data is pretty simple, I would say. So you just take each image and you say whether it's a malignant image or a benign image. So and it's actually validated by not just the ultrasound. So because if you see, like, just asking a radiologist to annotate an ultrasound would be unfair because they are not very sure what is going on there, right? So yeah, they did have access to all the patient records, their histopathology reports, and their CT, MRI reports as well. So based on all of that, we did sort of annotate the images as malignant or benign. So where the radiologists kind of had their expertise in was kind of, highlighting the gallbladder region. It's like they drew a bounding box around it. So there, I think that part was fairly, I would say, unambiguous in terms of the annotation burden. So yeah, the radiologists did have a consensus on that, and it was drawn on consensus.
Okay, okay, sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I was just thinking how if somebody wants to get started in this field, how expensive is to hire a radiologist for doing this annotation.
Yeah, I would assume it's fairly expensive in that sense, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of, getting the right expertise from the radiologist is very difficult. And also, sometimes it's not even possible for them to, annotate based on the ultrasound image or based on a single modality alone. They might require the clinical informations in that sense. So Yeah, I think in that sense it would be useful if you can get yourself into a collaboration with a hospital where they do have an influx of patients, and they would maintain all these patient records and clinical history or the histopathological reports, everything. So in that sense, it becomes much easier for the doctors to give you a complete set of trustworthy annotations.
Oh, yeah. I think that's very, very important when we are building these systems. We
Right.
need a very good radiologist who has this domain knowledge to be for annotating the data set specifically.
Right.
Yeah, it's extremely important. Yeah.
Yeah, so PGI, they do have a very well-defined list of, highly qualified radiologists, I would say. And Professor Pankaj Gupta was collaborating with us from the PGI side. And
Hmm.
yeah, he was extremely good at what he was doing. So yeah, we are lucky in that sense.
Okay, okay. Good. Continuing our discussion, right? So after understanding about the radiologist involvement about radiologist, I just have few questions on some of your publications. So I saw that you have used a curriculum-based curriculum-based learning kind of an approach for your first work, right? So it was interesting to come up with a criteria based on visual acuity.
Yeah.
Right, so because since that being the first work, probably there must be some work which really must have motivated you to understand or to come up to a conclusion, okay, saying that, okay, visual acuity is something which is definitely going to work for you, right? So,
Okay.
how did you come to that specific point?
I see.
Because this
Okay.
is extremely useful for the researcher for getting started in this field. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Right. So visual acuity, right. So visual acuity, the inspiration, I would say, let's first talk about the problem that we encountered to sort of, to solve what we invented that visual acuity. I'm sorry. The problem that we encountered was firstly that the ultrasound images. Maybe can I share my screen and show you some
Yeah,
images that
yeah,
might.
sure. I've just given
Okay.
the permissions. You can just go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure. Let me see. Okay. Where is my screen? I need to give it some kind of a permission.
I have already given it.
Yeah, I think I haven't given Zoom the permission. Let me see.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. It will ask me to sort of quit and reopen.
Mhm.
Um, okay, let me quit and reopen. Yeah, let's see. Um, Right. To answer your question, like what exactly motivated us and what led to the challenge, I would probably want to show you some of the ultrasound images that might
Mm-hmm.
give you a hint, like kind of challenges that we are talking about. So this is one ultrasound image, and these are few of the ultrasound images as well. So one issue is like you would see that this is a gallbladder. It's like a black balloon shaped kind of object that you will find,
Mm-hmm.
and the liver. So this is a regular gallbladder, and you would find this regular anatomy here as
Mm-hmm.
well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you would see there's some stones here. This point,
Mm-hmm.
this whitish stone. And this is a malignant gallbladder. You will see that that shape is entirely, destroyed. So you don't get a regular shape of in terms of a malignant gallbladder.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the challenges. And the other challenge would be like, this stones, they would often cast a shadow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here is a stone and it's actually casting a shadow. And this kind of shadowy regions may actually confuse the network with gallbladder regions because they
Mm-hmm.
also look very right. And we actually, so this is kind of a grad camp heat map from ResNet 50. And
Mm-hmm.
this ResNet 50 is actually pointing to this shadowy region, which is actually nothing. There's no, we are not at all interested in this region.
Yeah.
So to tackle those, we actually sort of, proposed a solution where we first focus on the regions of interest, and then we try to add the classification on that. Um, yeah, so I don't know if this is changing. Yeah, this is. Yeah, so basically this is what we are talking about. We gave an image, and instead of looking at the whole image, can we do some kind of a region selection and filter out the candidate regions of interest and
Mm-hmm.
sort of localize the particular and the candidate region of interest and do our classification on them. So basically we run the classifiers on each of them, and finally we kind of aggregate the decisions, and whatever is the worst decision, we take that.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, we want to have a high recall system. So we would take, if any of them says it's a malignant, we will say it's a malignant. But what is the problem with these kind of systems is that we get a lot of false positives as well. So we see that, so this is one of that sample, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a benign abnormality. It only shows gallbladder stones. Here, this arrow points to the stones.
Mm-hmm.
But if you see the RADCAM image of the network, it actually focuses on the adjacent liver tissues. Yeah, see, the liver tissues or this ecogenic region. All these things are being being pointed out by the network. So we see that the network actually sees these liver tissues and concludes that, okay, this is a tissue, so I should say it's a lesion and it's a malignant lesion. So that's the issue, right? So the network gets confused to the spurious textures, which is adjacent to the gallbladder when you do this kind of localization. And it increases the false positives. That's what we sort of observed. So now what can we do to, tackle these challenges? So that's where the visual acuity curriculum sort of gets its genesis. So I will again want to show you the basic idea of the visual acuity. So we humans start our visual journey with a very low visual acuity, right? So we do not have enough local information. So we are kind of forced to expand the receptive field, and we would want to look at more global information like the shape, which is kind of even also you can say it's a low frequency region. So so when we grow up and when we get the full vision, like then we can use both this information. So we can also use the expanded view that we learned during the infancy, or we can also distinguish based on the local information. So there was one paper from Pawan Sinha's group, which sort of worked on these images, although they talked about a different different issue. They talked about, the visual acuity in humans, and they sort of talked about how it influences their capability of looking into the local regions, global regions. And they sort of concluded the kids which start their journey with a visual cataract, they actually see the things much later than the normal humans. So when they start seeing, they see directly like the non-blurred images, and their visual capability of seeing the global information is much less than the normal humans. So that is kind of a cue that we got, and we understood that, okay, if we can mimic the same for the networks, if we can show the networks during its infancy, or maybe let's say when it is starting its training, can we show them the low visual acuity images and see if it helps? So basically, in the beginning of the training, we would sort of blur the images and slowly reduce the blur. So we are kind of focusing in terms of more towards the low frequency features such as shape. So we are kind of saying that the neural network should get biased towards features like shape rather than features like textures, right? So that was the genesis, and that was the ideation of the visual acuity based curriculum that we talked about. And I'd probably also show you one effect of it. So this is a benign gallbladder which has a stone in it, and we placed an artificial tissue here, so in the liver. So this does not change the diagnosis of the gallbladder. The gallbladder still remains benign. But now this artificial tissue is sort of influencing our network, and the network starts focusing on it, and it gives the decision as malignant. Now, when you train with the curriculum, the network again starts focusing on the thickened wall and this stone region again, and says, okay, this is a benign kind of disease. So yeah, this kind of curriculum does help the network to learn the shape features rather than getting biased to the soft tissue like textures. So I hope that kind of answers the question. Karthik, you're on mute.
Yeah. Sorry. So I think it perfectly answers my question. I think it's a very interesting thought also to consider visual acuity here. It's
Mhm.
very probably. Thank you so much for considering to showing the pictures. Without
Right.
the pictures, probably it might be very difficult to understand.
Yeah. These pictures are in public domain, so they are in my paper, so I don't have any kind of constraint in showing that.
Correct. So, but I think it's a very interesting to use visual acuity here. I So I was the from the curriculum learning, what I was always thinking was, if we show the network some kind of a what do you say, show some difficult examples first and show the easy examples later. I always used to think in that direction, but it's not exactly that. Okay, if you show images with low visual acuity, it's not exactly that uh,
Yeah.
what do you say? It's a difficult example, but the ultimate goal here is trying to understand more about the shapes rather than your network allowing to focus more on textures. So
Right.
you're guiding your neural network in this direction so that it's not ultimately classifying the spurious noise or the which is coming from the adjacent organs or the false tissues.
Right. So here, so one clarification that I should be giving is that these shape features are more important in terms of the gallbladder disease, because the gallbladder is a hollow organ.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the abnormality that you will see, it will start appearing on the wall, on the edges, right?
Mm-hmm.
As compared to something like a breast cancer. So a breast cancer, you will usually see kind of a lesson, and the doctors sort of base their diagnosis based on the textures that the lesson is showing. So if you talk about a cancer like a breast cancer, probably visual acuity will not be the right kind of method in that, because there you would want the network to learn more from the local textures. But here we do not want that. So it's kind of a decision that you would want to take based on your problem setup.
Correct. Yeah. It's absolutely true. And so the false issue that you were mentioning here, right? So can I think it is a kind of a data augmentation step?
Yes, you can,
Yeah,
yes. And
yeah.
one of the reviewers did sort of made this comment like, how is it different from a data augmentation?
Mm-hmm.
It is different from a data augmentation in that sense. You can think that data augmentation is kind of a random curriculum, right? You do the blurring, but you do it on a random basis. You do not have a kind of systematic bias towards it.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of doing that random curriculum, if you take this, systematically biased curriculum, where you show the network, the data augmentation in a systematic way, then it
Mm-hmm.
improves its performance.
Yeah, systematically biased. Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, but that is because I was working on a similar problem on systematically introducing these false objects. So in
Mhm.
one of the problem which I was working in agri robotics, so that I was able to correlate with that, and then I thought it's very much similar to that. Good. So, and the other aspect is because one of the key thing you mentioned this earlier as well on making the systems more trustworthy, right?
Mhm.
Providing enough explanations, being making our system more explainable. You mentioned this point earlier as well. So, what kind of an explainability you have incorporated in your Ratformer? So, the kind of explanations that you give out, is it easily understandable by a radiologist? Can you please give us some insights on that as well?
Sure. So yeah, let me also share my screen again. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
because I might show some of the images. All right. So that one. Yeah. So yes, coming to your first question. So basically, we would want to give kind of decisions, maybe which looks like this. So can you say, let's say this is one of the decisions, okay?
Mm-hmm,
Intramural ecogenic mural foci due to cholesterol deposition, intramural calcification, or maybe you can say extramural invasion significantly associated with malignancy. These kinds of explanation would be very helpful to a radiologist. So
mm-hmm,
this is in terms of what we call is a radiological lexicons that you might want to say, which
mm-hmm,
is concurrent with the reporting and data standards or the RADS standard.
mm-hmm,
So the gallbladder did not have a RADS before. So again, PGI and they have actually published an article and they have designed what they call is a GB RADS or the gallbladder reporting and data standards.
mm-hmm,
So this gallbladder cancer reporting and data standards, they sort of try to define certain clinical features and based on the consensus of the expert radiologists from different institutes or at different expertise level, and they come to design certain lexicons. This is by no means the full set of lexicons that is out there. This can be revised further with the help of the AI based feature discovery as well. But anyway, so we thought maybe this is the starting point. So apart from the GradCam visualizations, can we identify the neural features which is responsible for these kinds of radiological lexicon based explanations?
mm-hmm,
So the way we kind of did it is kind of a design that we call the Ratformer. So the Ratformer takes kind of a image and it generates a heat map to sort of identify the local region. And this local region is passed on to the local branch where we sort of use a visual bag of feature style embedding. And these visual words are each of the features that we have. And now we combine the global and local to a transformer-based fusion, and we sort of kind of backpropagated the detection um, at the inference time to figure out which are the local features that were highlighted the most, or that is kind of giving me the highest activation, right?
mm-hmm,
And these highest activation features are kind of mapped to the One second, why the slide is not changing? Okay, yeah, right. So these highest activated features are kind of mapped with the GBRAT's lexicon of these images. So we actually took a validation set, and for the validation set, we asked the radiologist, okay, can you sort of design your explanations based on this? Like, which set of radiological lexicons do you think is appropriate for these set of images? So for each image, they might give you 1, 2, 3, or 4 explanations, or 4 RADS lexicon associated to that image. Now at the validation time, we do know like which are the radiological features that, which are the neural features that the RAD format triggered, or the visual bag of word features that the RAD format triggered. Now we do kind of a set-to-set matching between these two. It's kind of a Hungarian matching that we use. And we do this matching and sort of figured out, okay, these features are responsible, or these features are associated with these lexicons. Basically, set of neural features A is associated with lexicon feature, a set of lexicon features B. And so basically, whenever you are trying to sort of give a decision, now all you need to do when you are giving an unknown image at the test time, all you need to do is basically you need to sort of figure out which are the highest activated neural features and what were the corresponding lexicons with respect to those neural features. So that will give you an intelligent human-like explanation, apart from this bag of features as well. So that's the kind of explanation that we are talking about. And yeah, one additional thing I would also want to mention, the capability of designing new lexicons that I earlier sort of highlighted. We did see one of the neural features that was getting triggered in more than 80% of malignant cases. But it was actually not matched to any of the lexicons that we had. So we are not sure why that feature was triggered. So maybe we can see these sets of features and which are kind of unmatched to the lexicons. And maybe we can do a full set of clinical study to understand like why they were triggered.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's extremely useful. So, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So, can I consider this kind of an approach as something like a you assign, say, you take input as a group of features, and you assign multiple labels to it, something like a multi-label
Right.
classification kind of a problem?
Right. So, right. So this is, I would say this lexicon assigning business was not really a neural kind of architecture that we followed. It's just that we know like these sets of features, these sets of radiological features is useful for this in this image, and this image also had these neural features activated. So we have a set of neural features versus their radiological activation. So basically, we kind of do a set-to-set matching. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's kind of a Hungarian-based matching algorithm. So the algorithms is in the paper. I'm not going into the details of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, you can say it's kind of a multi-level if you want to do it in an end-to-end fashion. This is not end-to-end. This is kind of a post-hoc processing, if you're asking that. Yes. But yeah, I do believe you can convert it to an end-to-end algorithm where you sort of make these as learnable as well. And you sort of use it as a multi-level classification problem. And yeah, I think that would be the appropriate problem in that sense.
Yeah. Good. Thank you so much for these
Behind that, I would
inputs.
say there is a bottleneck. Just to just to clarify, you would require your entire training set to be, you know, this. You would want the lexicons for the all the images of your training set, and that will assert a lot of burdens on the radiologist. That's point number one. And point number two is if you do sort of, you know, trigger your network to go towards this kind of multi-level learning. So it might happen that it may suppress all those unknown features that I was talking about at the learning time, because it is getting biased towards these labels, right? So these two are the caveats that we need to be careful about.
Correct. Maybe, yeah, there are multiple challenges involved. I think it's good that you flagged me what are the different things that can come up if I make this problem as a multi-label classification kind of a setup. Yeah. Good. So, thank you so much for those points, and congratulations for your recent Mikai acceptances. Was
Thank you.
Yes, it was very good to see you publishing in Mikai consistently. So, when are these draft versions are available to the public community? I see that it's still upcoming.
Yeah, right. So we just submitted the camera ready. So I
Mm,
think we'll probably make it available in archive very soon. We're just sort of organizing the project page, having everything together.
mm,
I'll have to sort of do a lot of runaround for arranging the funds, etc. Like
mm,
the challenges that we face in Indian academia. But anyway,
mm, mm.
we'll soon probably make this available through archive.
Okay,
And
okay.
yeah, the proceedings will anyway come on October, the Mikai proceedings, but I
Mm.
hope we'll be able to make it available before that.
Okay, okay. And can you just give us a brief, quick idea about what are your the recent Mikai acceptances are about?
Okay, so the recent Mikai work that we are talking about is kind of a weakly supervised detection approach that we are interested in.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, you have already seen in the first work that we are talking about getting the regions, right? Training a region selection network.
mm-hmm,
Now, to train a region selection network, we did require annotated bounding boxes from the radiologists. So
mm-hmm,
that actually puts a burden on the radiologists. So GBCNet, which was the CVPR 2022 work,
mm-hmm,
that was actually reliant on these kinds of bounding box annotations for training. So one question that we have is like, can we learn these bounding boxes as well? Like, can we take a weekly supervised approach to that? Because anyway, we are talking about the candidate bounding boxes. They may or may not be exactly tight, but as long as they are covering the anomaly, we should be good. As long as they are covering the malignancy, we should be good. So this was the target that we sort of had in mind. So can we design a weekly supervised detector to detect the region of malignancy? And maybe that can be sort of, used as a pipeline version to the maybe GBCNet V2.
mm-hmm,
Right. So yeah, that was the main motivation of designing this kind of work. And we find out that transformers are kind of the new CNN these days, and it's outshining the CNNs in all aspects of the computer vision tasks. So we talked about kind of a data variant, the detection transformer variant, which is trained using a multiple instance paradigm, which is the standard for training weekly supervised detections. We treat each of these candidate proposals as instances, the image as bag, and then the standard multi-instance paradigm kicks in. And we try to classify each of these instances or proposals as malignancy versus background. And that's the way we sort of try to figure out which is the right region for your malignancy. Right.
mm-hmm,
So that's kind of a work that we have done for the Mikai. And the other work where this is not which I primarily did, I am just a co-author to that. So Mayank Gupta have done that. So this is more about the reliability part. So this is not exactly focused to the GBC. It's more of a generic kind of work which I believe will have a lot of impact going ahead in the reliability landscape. Because in our initial experiments, we found out that often these medical imaging challenges, they would have very small or limited number of data, right? And the standard calibration metrics like EC, they do not really perform well in these cases. So these metrics themselves are not reliable. So you cannot assess the reliability fairly well when the data set is small. So we kind of highlight this challenge and sort of propose a new robust EC metric and also a robust calibration loss to sort of deal with these challenges. So that's kind of a work that Mayank did. And I do believe it's a very impactful work going ahead in the future.
okay, yeah. Uh, yeah, thanks. So thanks for giving the insights. Maybe we'll look forward for your
Yeah,
The
sure,
web
sure,
pages
definitely.
and the paper. Yeah, soon. Yeah. Yeah. Good. So, any final piece of advice that you would like to give for the researchers who are getting started in this field, say probably somebody taking your publicly available data set, some academic researcher, because we have a lot of
Mhm,
followers after we started the SciTech Talks initiative. Uh,
mhm.
who are very keen about working in the medical image analysis, and there are a few of them I know who want to get started in this field by taking your data set as a starting point. Say, what is the kind of advice or what the kind of research problems that you would like to suggest them to get started with as an extension of your work?
Right. So I would say yes, there are plenty of challenges in the medical imaging field. In terms of if you talk about the problems that requires solution, there's no dearth of it. So, for
Mhm.
example, if we talk about the GBC, right, or the gallbladder cancer. So right now, I just kind of focused on solving it for the ultrasound modality. But what
Mhm.
about the other modalities? What about CT? MRI? Can we do better? Or how about a multimodal approach? Maybe can we integrate the clinical data into it? That would make the
Mhm.
decisions more trustworthy or more effective. Maybe not just clinical data, some histopathological data as well. Maybe at the inference time, you just use one single modality, but can you train the network using a multimodal approach? So that's one question that you need to answer. And again, coming to the domain generalization problem that we were talking about, right? So it is kind of, I mean, all my study have been done on a single center data, which I believe is kind of a shortcoming that needs to be addressed in near future. So yeah, if I am not able to get all the data right now, maybe at future point of time, coming 1 year, 2 year down the line, we'll definitely have multiple centers data. So can we solve the domain generalization problem then? That's the other piece of the puzzle. And what about some challenges like, see, there are certain things like, targeted medicine or targeted chemotherapy, where we talk about this precise medicine based on the genomic characterizations of a patient. For example, HER2 new gene is something which is known as an aggressive cancer gene. So can we detect the presence or absence of such, such genes based on the imaging modalities alone? I don't think there is a study that has been done on this line. So this can be a very interesting study point as well. So yeah, there is no dearth of challenges if you want to take up these line of work. And talking about other cancers like breast cancer, head and neck, CNS, I mean, there are multiple challenges in these types of domains. And the more, I would say, the more challenging part is actually not the research or not tackling the problem. It's more about the transformation of your research. So that's exactly where the actual challenge lies. I mean, right now, all the research that we are doing is academic, right? So it's been done, it's been published. Okay, great. But what is the real-time transformation that we are seeing? We haven't seen any of it right yet, right? So that is the prime challenge if somebody is willing to start on medical imaging. So my suggestion is like, look out for transforming your research into a real-time application, right? You get papers, very good. But what is the impact of those papers, right? You have to go beyond the academic community and sort of transfer this to a maybe a usable software system, or maybe you can deploy it into a IoT edge device and sort of serve it to the doctors so that they can test it on real-time patients, do a real-time validation, clinical trial, whatever. But
Yeah.
that has to go on, right? That effort that you are doing academically, that has to be transformative. That has to be transformation. There has to be a transformational capacity to it. And it has to be translated into a real-time product so that people can use it, uh, right? So that's kind of a more that's kind of a more important thing that you should keep in mind when you are starting these researches. So that's the end goal that you should be trying out. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's one piece of advice that I might give. And of course, like, there's no dearth of challenges in terms of the problem. So you can pick whatever problem that interests you and whatever problem that has an impact on the patient's life. And yeah, of course, get yourself attached to a very knowledgeable doctor or a very knowledgeable physician so that you get that domain expertise in the right manner. Even Karthik, you pointed out, right, when you started working with the surgical data sets. So until you talk to a doctor, you did not realize like what you are doing wrong. So that
Yeah,
feedback mechanism has to be there. So you cannot do it alone. You have to have a collaboration with medical professionals to do it
yeah,
effectively,
yeah, yeah.
right? So these are pieces of advice that I might give.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I think these are very useful set of advices that you have given here.
Mm.
To summarize, I think we have spoken a little more than 1 hour now. I thought
Yeah.
it will be there. It will be there around 30 or 45 minutes, but I think it was very interesting discussion. It went across with all the pointers that you have given, and you have summarized on how you could get the Prime Minister Research Fellowship initially, and later your interaction with doctors and the importance of explainability, domain shift. You have covered multiple points on visual acuity. You have shown us some pictures and explainability in Ratformer and some final set of advices for the researchers. I think uh, but to me, also it's a great learning I had, and thank you so much for your time for coming up today in spite of your busy schedule and participating in this discussion. Thank you so much, Soman.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Karthik, for inviting me. It was wonderful. I mean, it was a great experience talking to you, and yeah, sharing the knowledge is like a fantastic experience for me as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
do look forward to a lot of collaborations, and in future, like if more people are sort of getting interested, so that's extremely, rewarding and fulfilling to know that, like you said.
sure, sure, sure. I'll just let you know in case if somebody is for whoever is keen to take your research problems and go ahead and if they're really keen about any possible collaborations. And that's the ultimate objective. If somebody is getting interested, and I'll connect them with you, and then I think it will be very useful for them as well to get some inputs from you and your experience.
Right. Thanks a lot, Karthik.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Somen. Yeah. See you.
Yeah. Thanks, Karthik. See you and have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.